There are stargazer lilies on the table when I arrive on Saturday evening. Last week it was ranunculus and something exotic I'd never seen before. Another time there were peonies, which are my faves. There's always something fragrant in the bouquet, eucalyptus or pine or something. And somehow these bouquets always look considerate instead of arranged. He goes to the market on Saturday mornings before I get there, and he comes back with these flowers, not because I asked him to, but because they make me smile, and he happens to love my smile. I put my bag down and I just stand and stare at them. I mean, they're beautiful. I always say thank you because gratitude is a big part of how I move through the world, but I notice that there's usually something underneath my thank you. It's surprise. Like for a split second before the gratitude, I'm surprised because there is a part of me that still, even after all this time, doesn't expect to be considered. I mean, I'm 50 something years old and I am still shocked by a gift that doesn't come with an invoice. Hey, lovers. This is Sex in Real Life. Honest conversations about sex and relationships beyond 40. I'm your host, Stacey Herrera. Earlier that day, I was out and about running errands, moving things off my Saturday to-do list. And I passed this couple and they're sitting on this bench. And I do this thing that I noticed myself doing lately, which is I'm looking for the labor. I'm looking to see who's doing the labor. I mean, after a certain age, you stop seeing romance and you start noticing architecture. I notice, who's leaning toward whom and whether anyone is actually listening or are they just waiting for their turn to speak. You can see the weight that sits between people and how it's balanced. So while I'm walking past them, though, I'm also thinking about my own relationship and about how mundane it is. I mean, it's wonderful, but it's mundane. We go to dinner and sometimes I cook. We disagree about stuff. He goes to the market and brings back flowers I didn't ask for. And when I arrive on Saturday evenings, because that's the routine, his home feels like mine because he wants it to. It's this ritual that we have, and it makes life sated for both of us, but sated in a way that only ordinary things done consistently can do. And yet, when I'm walking by this couple, I feel this shadow hovering over me. And it took me so long to realize what that feeling was, but I call it the flinch. I was in another relationship for a long time and I loved him. I mean, I genuinely enjoyed his company. But while I was in it, I would have described him as generous. And I thought that was true. And it wasn't until the relationship ended that I realized that it wasn't generosity at all. He had been keeping score the entire time. And every time he supported me, there was a number attached to it that I didn't know existed. The generosity was conditional, except I didn't know what the conditions were. I mean, I'm a nurturer by nature. I mean, it's just who I am. I give without keeping track because honestly, I don't know any other way to be. And of course, he loved being nurtured. He really loved being held. But I never felt like that. I never felt nurtured and I never had the experience of being held in that relationship. I normalized this asymmetry so much that I didn't even realize it while it was happening. For as long as I can remember, I thought my job was to provide soft landings for other people. I just didn't realize that the only person in the room without a safety net was me. And that's what this relationship felt like. And again, I enjoyed his company and I loved him. But that's what long relationships do when they're out of balance. We normalize the scarcity until the hunger just feels like how things are. You stop expecting to be held because you've forgotten that being held was ever an option. You start thinking about your own needs as a heavy lift, and you learn to interpret their begrudging support as a favor that eventually you're going to have to pay back. In this previous life of mine, support felt like a friction tax. It wasn't this aggressive tug of war. It didn't look like that, but everything was done with a hint of reluctance, a sigh or hesitation or whatever. And there was just never an eagerness to show up for me. And I spent years feeling like a chore, a chore that eventually someone would get around to. We talk a lot about moving on, and we talk about it like it's a change of address or something. We pack the boxes and assume that because the structure is gone, that we are free of the habits. But being in a relationship for a long time does something to your biology that you won't see on the paperwork. You develop these survival reflexes that feel like your personality. You learn to take up exactly the amount of space that won't cause a problem. And then you start reading the room before you speak and checking the atmospheric pressure to see if it's okay for you to be yourself today. And if you do that for long enough, you stop noticing that you're doing it. You think you're just easygoing, but really, you're hypervigilant. You're scanning for the side that means you've asked for too much. Then, when someone new comes along, someone who stocks your favorite things without being asked, or who puts flowers on the table because your happiness is a priority and not a reluctant concession, someone who is eager to see you walk through the door. And there's this part of you that just keeps waiting for the catch. The nervous system learns what it learns over decades. It doesn't update overnight. And even when the evidence says you're safe, your body is still scanning for the yank. You're waiting for the moment when they mention the price of the flowers or the effort of going to the market or the favor they did for you by making room in the fridge. You're waiting for the eagerness to turn into obligation. And that shows up in the bedroom too, by the way. I mean, the body loves to keep tallies too. If you've spent years where support felt conditional, where your needs were a burden and the score was always being tallied, your nervous system carries that into the new bed and you don't leave it in the old house. So you're with someone who's genuinely present and eager and attentive, but you can't feel that because your old life taught you that your authentic self was a production. You learned to make yourself small and less of a lift, and you're terrified that if you're actually too much, the generosity will stop. The shadow isn't in the room, but you find yourself still setting a place for it at the table. You are treating your current partner like an old enemy, waiting for them to reveal the invoice that you knew was going to come due. Then there's the counter swing. We leave a partner who kept score and reach for someone who gives freely. Or we let go of something with someone who was withholding and find someone generous. And we tell ourselves that we learned a lesson. And, we have. We learned how to manage what we don't want. But sometimes what looks like a new choice is still being run by that old shit. You aren't choosing a person, you're choosing a reaction. You're just correcting. And correctives, they say something revealing about limitations over time because you didn't choose them. You chose a way not to let the past come back into your world. So the shadow finds you anyway, and I mean, it always does, but the ghost is the version of you that doesn't believe that they deserve the flowers just because they exist. It's Monday evening now, and I'm sitting at my floor desk wrapping up. There's this side table next to me that I usually stack way too many things on, my journals, a mug, a glass of water, and whatever. And usually, before I wrap up for the day, I straighten it up, so that when I sit down the next day, I can think, but not tonight. Tonight, I just leave it. I'm thinking about those stargazer lilies, about seeing my creamer on the shelf in the refrigerator and him being genuinely happy to see me in a way that still catches me off guard. When I walk into the kitchen and I see those things, my nervous system calms down. It's not really relief, just calm. Like like something that I've been bracing for a long time finally doesn't have to be braced. And it doesn't matter who says they love you. I mean, it matters whether you feel it or not. And what I feel in the kitchen is that my likes are a priority, that my comfort matters. But I still catch myself waiting for the bill to come due. I still feel that old reflex fire, the one that says that one of these days, the catch is going to reveal itself, that the sigh is going to return, that the audit will start. There hasn't been a single incident to justify that fear, not a single one, but my heart is sometimes a slow learner and, it's cautious and refuses to graduate until it's absolutely sure that the teacher isn't lying. The persistent lag between the life you used to have and the life that you're currently in right now, it's like this phantom limb of the previous relationship that still aches when the weather changes. The work isn't fixing it. There's nothing really broken, not really. It's just noticing, catching the reflex before it runs and recognizing the sigh you're waiting for isn't coming, that the bill isn't in the mail and the heavy lift is actually light, that the flowers are just flowers, given because you're worth giving them to. If you recognized your own flinch today, if you are still wearing the armor from your previous relationship, pass this episode along. Send it to somebody that you know might be shadow boxing with a ghost, just as a way to remind each other that that bill isn't coming. And if this conversation felt like a soft landing for you, consider leaving a comment or a rating. It's a simple way to help others find these conversations. Next week, we are going to go somewhere different. We're going to be talking about the one thing that a man over 50 almost never admits out loud, that he feels replaceable. We're going there. So I'll see you then. Ciao.